What's up, you guys? Tyler Huxford here, and for today's video, we're going to be talking about the 11 most important lessons learned in 11 months of reefing. So today we're going to be highlighting my 40-gallon reef, which sits right in my living room. So this is an innovative marine 40-gallon breeder, more specifically the Fusion 25, if you're looking for the specific name. And I'm making this video today as today marks 11 months that I've successfully grown corals in this tank. And if you've watched this channel, you know that this tank has been just an absolute roller coaster. We've gone through so much together, fam. Everything from dinos to bryopsis to green hair algae to overzealous emeralds to bristleworm infestations, lighting troubles. It's been a wild ride. But 11 months ago, we finally figured it out. I finally put some frags in the tank that started to grow and took to the rock. The pest issues went away, and now we have a thriving reef. And the reef doesn't actually look great today. I just put my hand in there, plus the lights are dimming, so things are starting to recoil a bit. But tomorrow I'll be bringing home a fuzzy dwarf lionfish, a major landmark for me. Ever since I started this hobby when I was 15 years old, I had always wanted to have a lionfish, and I'm finally bringing one home tomorrow. And honestly, I don't know what will happen to this tank once I introduce young Simba, that's going to be his name, to the tank. Could be that everything will crash, and I'll at least want to make one video highlighting where the tank was, how well the tank was doing before potentially introducing something that could really make my nutrients go up or just really make the tank crash. But overall, I'm pretty excited and really excited to make this video today. So when I started this tank, I just started with some salt water from my local fish store, as well as some dry rock, which leads us to lesson number one, which is don't ever start a tank with dry rock. Seriously, it will save you so much time and hassle later on. I know it looks good, and we envision our white rocks, which look really good when they're first initially put in the tank. Just watching those white rocks gracefully becoming nice shades of pink and purple, that's kind of what we envision, but you end up with all kinds of issues, everything from ammonia to dinos to algae. Typically your tank won't have all the beneficial bacteria you would need to fight those things off. You can save yourself a lot of time, especially for new hobbyists, if you just start your tank with some nice mature live rock, which you can usually get from a local fish store or from your buddies. Take it from me, you never want to start with dry rock. If I could go back, I absolutely would not have done that. Lesson number two, so don't fall for the name brand stuff or what everyone else wants. Get what you like. This goes for corals, this goes for fish, it also goes for equipment. You'll be happier if you listen to your own eyes. You'll also spend a lot less. Sometimes that $25 frag or that $40 fish is just as good to you as the $250 frag or the $400 fish that everyone raves about or wants. Purple tangs, for example, are usually a pretty expensive fish. No one has ever come to my house and seen my fish tank, either here in the living room or in my office where I have more fish, frankly, and ever said, wow, what's that fish? To the purple tang. Usually they like the powder blue tang, for example, and the powder blue tang is just a lot cheaper than the purple tang. And honestly, to me, the powder blue tang just looks a lot more beautiful. So listen to your own eye. Don't buy what everybody else wants. That goes for equipment as well. So you'll notice I have two lights up at the top. I have an AI Prime as well as a Kessel A360X. And I think the majority of folks out there would say that the Kessel light is the better light, simply because it comes from a more recognized brand. But the fact of the matter is, if I was only using one light, I would absolutely use this AI Prime. The blue light that is emitted from this light is just frankly better. It makes the corals, the colors, especially in the corals, just glow and shine and shimmer a lot better than this Kessel light. And this light is half the price of the Kessel light. Now, I do use two lights because I am starting to grow some sticks, some SPS, which do require a higher emission of PAR at the top of the tank. Plus, I want to make sure that the entire tank is completely flooded with light. But if I was going with one light here, I would absolutely go with the AI Prime, and I would have saved myself some money. So you can do the same simply by going with what you like as opposed to what everybody else likes. The next lesson learned, probably the most important. If you take anything away from this video, it would be this, which is remember the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. The more steps we add to our reef procedures or routines, the more complex it gets and the less consistent we become. The number one contributor to coral growth as well as fish health is simply consistency. We unfortunately are members of a hobby which likes to sell us on the fact that adding complexity or layers to our tank, meaning more light, more flow, more filtration, more media, more feeding, will lead to more growth, more color, the outcomes we like. When the actual fact is, corals don't want to be fed. Corals just want consistency. So if you can consistently feed your corals, that might be good. But if you're not going to consistently feed your corals, if you're not going to consistently keep an eye on the flow, if you're not going to consistently use things such as kalkwasser or auto top-offs, then it's best just not to do it. Because if you go through waves of being really on top of things, then not being really on top of things, that can actually hurt the growth and the health of your tank. Make sure that you're sticking to a program and a procedure that which you can really replicate. Rinse, wash, repeat. Just so you're aware, my tank is pretty simple. I have 2 filter stocks, an Innovative Marine UV sterilizer, protein skimmer, also by Innovative Marine, a heater, 2 lights, and a bag of carbon, and that's it. I've tried refugiums, I've tried adding Neros to increase the flow in the tank, I've tried GFO, things of that nature. Honestly, I should have never done those things, and they led to more problems than it did actual improvements in the tank. So keep it simple, stick to a procedure which you can replicate day in and day out. That's honestly how you'll see the most efficient and effective growth throughout your tank. Next lesson learned. So this is my second tank. I have a living room tank. I also have an office tank, which I feel like I highlight more often because there's more going on in that big tank. But it's been really helpful having 2 tanks. And I would always recommend that you have 2 tanks. And the reason for that being, sometimes pests become an issue, fish misbehave, or crashes take place, unexplained crashes in fact. I've experienced quite a few crashes due to either pests or due to myself, which were completely explained, such as kalkwasser overdoses or me just raising the alkalinity way too high in my tanks. And it was always good to be able to take corals and fish from a tank which is suffering and placing them in another tank which I know is doing really well and is reliable. I've saved myself from having to start completely over in this hobby just by having a safety in the next room. You'll want to have that safety net in the next room if things go awry in your display tank. The next lesson would be avoid throwing money at problems. This is especially for the new young reefers. So if you experience things like algae, dinos, things like even ick, illness, things of that nature in your tank, I think the first thing that new reefers like to do is they like to throw money at the problems. They're looking for instant solutions. Always remember, sudden solutions are usually the gateway to long-term problems. In this hobby, you need to utilize the best medicine in the hobby, which honestly is time. Time is the best medicine. Usually most issues will go away on their own as long as you're sticking to a routine which promotes health, which promotes growth. Every once in a while you may need to add a thing here or there. You've certainly seen that on my channel where I've reviewed some products. But especially at the beginning stage of the hobby, don't throw your money at unnecessary treatments, additional feedings, additional products to rid your tank of what just about every tank will undergo in the initial stages of this hobby. A lot of hobbyists end up quitting within a year for this reason alone. It can get really expensive if you try to jump on top of everything so aggressively right away. Be patient. The next lesson learned would be always begin a tank with the end in mind. So this goes for corals, this goes for fish. Make sure you know what's the overall goal of the tank. Are you going for a reef tank, a fish only? Are there certain types of fish that you'd like to house in your tank? Make sure that as you get started, don't just initially purchase everything you find that a local fish store or a buddy says are really good corals or fish for a beginner's tank. Corals grow. fish get bigger. Initial fish that you put in the tank get more aggressive. Make sure that you are only adding things which help you stay on track for what you hope to accomplish. In my tank, for example, I'm going for the total rainbow look. I'm looking for the most colorful, bright, stunning corals to put in this tank. And there have been a few instances where I have put corals in this tank simply to fill up space, and that was just a complete waste of money. And now I have these zoas, even some monoporas, which have outgrown their welcome, and now I can't fill those spaces with corals that I actually want. So don't make that same mistake. I actually usually see this mistake with fish. Usually you want a really cool fish like a butterfly fish, for example, but you started by putting in some clownfish, some more territorial fish like tangs, and then it's almost impossible to get a copper band butterfly to eat in an environment with such aggressive fish. So make sure you begin with the end in mind. Another lesson learned, this is primarily for nano tank reefers, but could also be for reefers with larger tanks. Anemones are trouble, and I really just don't recommend you purchase an anemone. That being said, I made the mistake with this tank of purchasing an anemone first. I think that one of the first things we want to see is clownfish, learning to use an anemone for its host, which is a really cool sight to see in nature. I have a video which talks about that. But the reality is, anemones are trouble. They grow, they split, and then they sting your corals. They move around, and then once they get settled, they are almost impossible to get out of your tank. And as you slowly start to fill your tank with frags or corals that you want, and they're starting to grow, they will bump into those anemones, they'll get stung, they'll die on you, and you'll wish you never had those anemones. If you have a small tank, I just really don't recommend you have any anemones. You'll notice that all of my anemones are gone from this tank. I used to have 2, and now I have none. I've placed them in the big tank, but even in the big tank, they're starting to overstay their welcome. There are other things that clownfish will host, and that would be the one caveat to this lesson that I would add is sometimes clownfish will even host things you don't want them to, like euphyllias or torches or zoas. It can really make them upset, and you do kind of need to prepare for that. So just keep that in mind. Next lesson I would say is not all corals are created equal, not even in the same species. We're talking about zoas, monis, hammers, or torches. So right here you'll see my zoa garden. This is a zoa garden I started in my big tank, but ended up having to move to the small tank because my big tank had some pygmy angels which like to pick at these things. And just about all these frags were the same size when I initially started. You'll notice some of these polyps are bigger, some of these polyps have colonized much faster, which is a little frustrating. I almost wish I would have put a little more space in between the zoas, because the zoas that grow the fastest and the biggest are sometimes the zoas we like the least, and then they overtake the zoas that you like the most, but take a while to grow. Monoporas are notorious for this. You'll see up here at this part of the tank that the monopora is already starting to encroach where the Fruit Loops are. I really like Fruit Loops. Red Camp monoporas are nice to an extent, but they very quickly overgrow their welcome. If you have corals like monoporas, zoas, especially xenia or green star polyps, just keep in mind they're going to grow, they're going to take up space, and it's almost best to put corals like that on a rock that you're just totally okay with it being completely covered with that coral, and then when it starts outgrowing that rock, you can just move, chip off easily. I can't really do that in this tank because, again, I didn't really begin with the end in mind and just kind of thought everything would grow at the same pace, which nothing does. Another lesson is cleanup crews aren't always great for a reef. I don't have any snails in here. I think I have one snail, actually. No hermit crabs and no more emerald crabs, simply because those things would irritate my zoas. They're supposed to clean things up, but sometimes when they're doing their job, they'll just irritate things like euphyllia, torches I've seen picked by emeralds, and then of course zoas by the hermit crabs. And then the last lesson here is just don't buy corals if you don't absolutely love them. I think there's an extreme temptation, especially when you start out and you've just bought a new tank, you've dumped some money into getting started. We tend to go cheap on the fish and the corals that we purchase because we want to fill a tank as quickly as possible, and you need to resist that temptation because anything you buy will grow, and if you don't love it initially, you're certainly not going to love it if it starts taking over your tank. Just remember, every 4 frags that you gracefully walk away from means you get to buy one that you really, really like. And ideally, that's what you do. Buy corals you really like. They will grow with time. Give yourself a year. And soon, especially with a nano reef, you're going to see a glorious, beautiful reef just taking form right before your eyes. That's all for today's videos. Hopefully you benefited from some of this information. Thanks to the family who have followed me through this process of getting this reef tank started. We're finally there. We've also almost reached 2,000 subscribers. Just remember, at 2,000 subscribers, I will be drawing names for anybody who commented "Here for the Crack," spelled K-R-A-K, on any of my reef tank videos. The lucky winner will receive a free Grandmaster Krakatoazoa mailed directly to your door. In fact, you can see those Grandmaster Krakatoazoas growing right here. That's all for today's video, folks. Have a great day. Happy reefing out there.